welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington. Again, interesting essay by Glenn Ford, Black Agenda Report. We are cornered. There's no way out without a fight. The corporate offensive is attacking. I would call it a Wall Street offensive. Same idea. Obama is Wall Street's guy. Absolutely accurate and fundamental for the understanding of the current predicament. Obama has delivered the highest return on corporate campaign investment in the history of bourgeois democracy. Well, the few million that they gave him, they've been getting back trillions. And here's our situation. Wall Street servants have become more aggressive and demanding, and there's nothing in the Democratic Party to stop them. There is no cavalry coming over the ridge to save the people from massed capital. Certainly not the Democrats, whose self-caged left wing now finds its marginalized encampments under lockdown by their own president's hostile patrols. That would be Robert Gibbs, while the GOP and its Tea Party irregulars howl from the encircling darkness. That's what happens when progressives maneuver themselves into the same side of the battlefield as Goldman Sachs, as they did with reckless abandon in 2007, 2008, deliriously fighting their way into an encirclement in which they are now surrounded. And an economic analysis also worth mentioning here. Wall Street produces nothing of value, needless to say. Finance capital at this stage of the system's decline is incapable of reproducing itself through productive investment, and so must feed on existing producers or on the state. That's the anti-state angle, is to loot the state. Since Wall Street over the decades has already broken up, consumed, exported, and otherwise destroyed much of the U.S. productive economy, that leaves the states and all of its parts. Far from acting as a brake on these vampires, his friends, Obama leads the charge on corporate hijacking of public education, as signaled in January 2009, and all elements of the safety net, including Social Security, have to be on the table. That means privatization, looting, sacking, asset stripping, and all the rest. That's why Social Security, to feed the monster in Wall Street. Now, there's also the conjunctural aspect of this. Take a look at Tarpley.net. You'll see my interview from Wednesday of this past week on RT. And there, what you find is the question of China, right? China has lightened up a little bit on Treasury bonds of the U.S., and it's clear because China has gone into euro investments back in May, June, as the Anglo-American hedge fund attack on Greece, Spain, Portugal, and the euro was developing and unfolding. The Chinese made a combined technical, commercial, and political decision that they would not allow the euro to be destroyed. Rather, they would come in and support Greek investments. They'd also be doing themselves a favor because they'd been buying real assets at very, very low, depressed prices. So that's why we hear the howls of consternation from the Anglo-American hedge fund community, right? These people were telling everybody that the shorting of the euro was the investment of the year and that we were heading towards parity. And by July and into the beginning of August, it wasn't working. Now, that has changed a little bit. The euro has tended downwards over the last 2 weeks or so. What is the problem with that? Well, part of it is August in Europe, right? Spain, Italy, France, Bavaria all shut down because of the holiday strictly observed in Catholic Europe. Lucky them. It's also got to do with the fact that these stupid deflationary methods, right, these stupid budget-cutting methods, cause economic destruction. Right? You cut your budget, you destroy government activities, and you're going to find that the deficit is bigger the next time around. And you've got more unemployment, and you've got a suppressed economic situation in general. So that's what they're finding. The stupidity of these deflationary budget-cutting methods is showing because Germany is slowing to some extent. The other thing is that right now the whole world is essentially waiting to see where will the next panic break out. And the Anglo-Americans have some ideas. They have not given up on their attack on the euro. They are one-trick ponies. This is all they can think to do, other than the of course, the war with Iran, right? If you block the Straits of Hormuz or get Iran to do it, then you have secured 2, 3, 4, 500% increase in the demand for dollars. So the dollar will be in great shape. Everybody will be demanding dollars all over the world. But what we've seen in the past week are two things, right? An attack on the Hungarian forint, massive selling of the Hungarian forint currency. And if that's a country which is part of the European Union but not part of the euro, like Poland. If you have a panic in Hungary, that could then begin to reignite the euro banking crisis. If you watch CNBC, they had some of their predators there discussing how do you make money off the crisis of the Hungarian currency, and the answer was immediate: short Austrian banks. If you short Austrian bank stocks, they're going to take the hit if Hungary goes down. And, of course, if Austria goes down as part of a chain reaction, then that will drag Germany and others into the soup. So you get the idea. The other thing is, at the middle of the week, Standard & Poor's radically downgraded Irish debt. So they have a negative outlook now. So those are two gambits by the Anglo-Americans to see if you can't restart some kind of a crisis in Europe. However, the other side of it is worse for the Anglo-Americans, and that is, what's with the New York banking community? Take Bank of America. Look at the chart for Bank of America over the last 3 to 4 months. You will see down, down, down. It is a very ugly chart. What's going to happen to Bank of America over the remainder of this year, especially into September, October, and even November? I would not be optimistic. It looks like a very ugly chart. Another one is Citibank. We've been hearing rumblings that some payments crisis, some liquidity crunch for Citibank is due in September, October, right? That fateful third quarter payment deadline at the end of September, beginning of October, as the third quarter turns into the fourth quarter, the cruelest time of the year in Wall Street, as we've seen in 1929, 1987, 2008. It's a bad time. Citibank, you'll remember, had its stock go down by 17% in one day, actually in a very few minutes, in the month of June. And then, of course, they said, no, that was a mistake, and they got it so that it was down only 7% by the end of this episode. Who knows what that was? They claim it's a mistake. I'm from Missouri. I would look at Bank of America, Citibank, and then look at some others, right? Morgan Stanley doesn't look so great. And, of course, the granddaddy of them all, the original derivatives monster, Jamie Dimon's fiefdom over at J.P. Morgan Chase. If it turns out that the next shoe to drop is a recurrence of banking panic in New York and Wall Street, then the dollar takes its turn going into the torture chamber. And I think that's where we are. The world is simply waiting, and some of them are not waiting. People are taking active initiatives to make sure it happens to somebody else and not them, because the forces of depression, again, the $1,500 trillion of toxic-kited derivatives are all still there. Those are the forces of depression, and they're going to bankrupt somebody. The only question is, how can that mass of negative energy be directed against somebody, right? Beggar my neighbor, export the depression. It's interesting that China has not allowed the renminbi to go up much at all. It's practically where it was 2 or 3 months ago. Geithner was screaming, right, we want the renminbi to be upvalued. He wanted to export the depression to China in the only way that he could. That was one. He wanted the euro to go way down. That would export the depression into Europe. That hasn't worked so well either, although there's a second wave, perhaps, that we're seeing. So we're on the verge of something big, and we'll try to follow it and indeed get out ahead of it for you here on World Crisis Radio. Back in a minute.